Welcome to the Be That Healing Girl Podcast, and welcome to season 2. Bow, 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 bow. And in this episode today, we are going to talk about understanding the push-pull dynamic in your relationship. And I also think it's important while we think about this topic, and we're definitely going to talk about it, that we address what is coming up for season 2 in general. So basically some announcements here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can already see the difference in the up level. You know what I'm saying? Looks pretty good. And if you are a diehard listening on Spotify or Apple, just know that it's not just the visual that's going to change a little bit, but also the content. So today we are going to talk about understanding the dynamic, the push-pull dynamic, but I also want to take the opportunity to do something that I do with all my clients. It doesn't matter what level of working together that we do, whether that's the Healing Girl Gang, the Confidence Code, or one-on-one. One of the things I forward teach you or front of mind teach you or subconsciously teach you is how to zoom out. And to me, my handle, Be That Healing Girl, also super cute if you thought my name was Beth. My name is Claire if you're new here on the podcast. But it really is important to me that we understand how to zoom out and to not just look at ourselves microscopically or get really lasered in on what we think is the problem. So for example, with anxious attachment, that can look like getting really, really micro, just looking with a laser sight into he hasn't texted me in 5 seconds, and that becomes the whole focus. Part of healing in general is being able to zoom out. And one of the things that we don't realize is that how we do one thing is how we do everything. I have a complex relationship with aphorisms. How we do one thing is how we do everything is an aphorism. And I have a complex relationship with that. And also part of that is true, where if we tend to be perfectionistic in a relationship, like we have these almost impossible standards in relationship, or we create these barriers, or we beat ourselves up for not doing something right, that is perfectionism. That also translates to how we approach our relationship with our body, our relationship with food, our relationship with being a perfectionist in general, our relationship with work or our career or our business, with being burned out, our hormones, our health overall. All of this is really interconnected. And I want to really expand on what we talk about here because it is connected. If you are not taking care of your hormones or your health, that is going to have an impact on your relationship, okay? When I was experiencing burnout, when my hormones were all crazy, did I have a good libido? Absolutely not. Did that affect my relationship? Of course it did. So I just want to be able on this podcast to start to have a bigger conversation because it does matter. It does impact your relationship. So that's really the overall upgrade and up level. We are going to talk about our good old trusty things that we struggle with, relationship anxiety. And I want to, take some time during each podcast to really expand on different areas. And one that feels really important to me is around the topic around TikTok. Okay. And I feel like it's important because if you are listening to this podcast through TikTok, obviously this is important. And whether you agree or have a TikTok account or not, I think we can all agree that being silenced is not okay, right? To me, and in fact, if we're going to turn relationship perspective on it, it is not okay to be in a relationship where you can't be heard, or it's not healthy for you to be in a relationship where you're not heard. So I just was noticing for me something that felt really important to share here, which is I was feeling the kind of the psychic and emotional effect and impact of the ban taking place on today, which is Sunday. Technically today on the 19th, which is when I'm recording this podcast, TikTok was supposed to be unavailable. And so what I was noticing, even leading up to that, I was noticing that I was feeling basically really down, really depressed, a little scared. And part of that was because as a Filipino American, what I didn't realize, but besides the obvious things, that my business thrives through social media, that is an important thing. But deeper than that, what I realized was that I was feeling the impact of not hearing other people and not being heard. If you look at the majority of my content, especially on TikTok, I answer people's questions. And that has been a lifeline to people and for me, and felt really important. And so one of the things that I noticed in this upcoming ban was feeling just really sad. And then what I didn't realize was also the absolute mind fuck of betrayal. And in the betrayal in the sense of politicians, of the overarching systems that we're within, that we're playing under, that uh, they said that they were going to take it away on Sunday. And if you were like me, it got taken down on Saturday. And so for me, that felt like betrayal. And this feels important to share here on this podcast of how do we deal with betrayal and like how do we break out of that, and especially in a push-pull dynamic, which we're going to talk about for sure. It can feel like we are betraying ourselves, or that there is a betrayal happening in the relationship. And it just felt really important to me to say that if you are feeling the emotional roller coaster, and if you are feeling like a betrayal, you feel like your voice isn't being heard, that you can't hear other people's voices, which is the unique thing about TikTok. It can get so niche. Obviously, if you're here through TikTok, you know that. But what I feel is really important is that we understand betrayal is really complex, and it kind of needs to be dealt with. It needs to be processed emotionally. So I guess my advice is, and my recommendation in your healing process is to pause. I know it's really tempting to go scroll and to get, glean everything that you can. Make sure you go outside. Make sure you take some time off of technology. That's going to be just really important. And not only that, but seek out community outside of social media, right? Whether you are listening to this podcast, which is a form of community, it's a form of connection. But I recommend getting out there, getting into the real world. I am considering opening up real in-person events in San Diego and in different cities as we are traveling. But it feels really important that I recommend and I highly encourage you to keep your voice being heard, to seek out people that want to be heard in different areas. Also, I am just going to be looking at how can I maintain the connection of community that is self-owned, that is autonomous, because that's also just in alignment with what Be That Healing Girl and this brand and what I give to people is that you matter, your voice matters, that we have choice, and things that are happening with TikTok or Meta and how everything is kind of shaking out. It feels important that we have choice, we have autonomy. So I am thinking about opening a Substack. I don't know, are we going to Red Note? I think it's important that we examine our relationship with Meta to stop the data tracking with them. So just let me know. You can send me an email or any other way of communication. I don't prefer Instagram, so if you want to email me, Claire@BeThatHealingGirl would be great. Give me some recommendations. Where do you all want to go? Is it going to be Substack, Red Note? I don't know. I don't care. I want to be where you are. All right. So that being said, also just one other note, which is going to be more of a segment on different podcasts that we do, but I think it's also important to say on if you're astrologically inclined like I am, it's feeling really crazy that we're entering the age of Aquarius. We're entering Aquarius as for the next couple years, which is also having a Pluto transit. So Aquarius represents social change, higher structures, and Pluto is death and destruction. I've had some major Pluto transits, Craig as well. And while they feel really tumultuous while you're in them, they can feel really scary, like a part of you is dying. The other beautiful thing is that it's rebirth. So I just want to say, if you're astrologically inclined, that yes, this all can feel really scary. But the beautiful thing about Pluto is that it is about rebirth and recreating something new. So I think that's important to say. All right, let's talk about understanding the push-pull dynamic. And I just want to say that what feels just important to say around the push-pull dynamic is, first of all, how much it sucks. Okay, so we're going to talk about anxious, attachment with avoidant and this cycle that we can be in. If you haven't listened to the episodes with Craig and I, sorry, the audio is not the best. We're figuring it out as we go. But for me, what would happen, it felt like this kind of constant cycle, whether it was within the week, or for us, it felt like every 2 weeks or sometimes once a month, things would be good. Things would be so great. We were great when we were together. And then when we were apart, it felt like maybe it wasn't the exact same thing that we were fighting about, but the genre was the same. You know what I mean? Like, it was the same kind of fight. It was this push, pull, chase, retreat kind of deal that we had with each other. And first of all, I just want to say that feels so frustrating, right? Where in your experience, it's just like you want things to be better, and it feels really frustrating when you can't figure it out with this person, or honestly figure the thing out in yourself. I was talking to a client this past week around, they were, I think, on this some kind of, they did like a staycation or something like that, and they like to drink and listen to like music, and it just she knew she was white knuckling it up until the weekend. She had some things that she didn't want to bring up, and then they get out, have a couple drinks, and then it's like a blowout. Feel familiar? Totally felt familiar for me. And the thing that I think is really interesting around that is that she knew ahead of time. And I just want to say, if you are listening and you're with a good person, you know you have anxious attachment or relationship anxiety, this is the thing. This is the common thing that we experience, which is this kind of chase. You chase, they retreat. You don't want to bring something up, and then it comes out, and it's this whole thing, and it just can feel really frustrating. Okay. And I know that the thing that you want is to have some sort of things are good all the time. And I just want to say that this is oftentimes the mistake that people make with their healing, which keeps them in the cycle, is that they don't change. You might be experiencing or saying to yourself, well, things are so good, and they're good when they're together. I love you so much, but that is not good. that is not consistent. And the thing that I know that you want is to have that happening and the good be the whole time. It's not just when you're together, it's when you're apart too. And the reality that having that starts with creating emotional consistency. Now, the problem is that we rely on the other person for that emotional consistency. Now, that is not saying, let me be very clear before people misunderstand this. I'm not saying that the other person can't do their work too. That is absolutely necessary, right? They have to be receptive. They have to be open. Now, that is different than perfect, okay? I'm just going to say that because nobody's perfect. So if you're going into that, mishearing that, then that's on you, all right? Nobody's perfect. But what I noticed, we have to focus on what we can be in charge of. We can't control somebody else. We are not in control, but we are in charge. You are ultimately in charge of creating this emotional consistency for yourself. So I'll just even say this. We had an experience yesterday where Craig and I were doing our check-in, our weekly check-in, and I noticed that there were some things that were being said that in the past would have triggered the fuck out of me, triggered me, absolutely. And what I noticed was that instead of me taking it personal or me just wanting to self-punish myself because my partner has some things he brings to the table, that I noticed because I put my emotional body and emotional state first and foremost, I was able to watch myself like, oh, that kind of stings, but it doesn't mean anything about me. This just means that something in our dynamic needs to grow and needs to connect more. So I say that because I know it's possible. And a lot of times if we don't have that emotional base within ourselves, then it only gets amplified and it gets exacerbated in our external relationships. And so I just want to say that your own internal emotional consistency, and I talk about this more in the Confidence Code and in the Healing Girl Gang, But when you can acknowledge your own feelings, when you have space to feel your feelings, when you have vocabulary around your feelings, when you can accept your feelings, then that is a good start and a good foundation for you to be able to hold that space and to open that space with somebody else. So if you desire things to be good all the time, then I recommend what is your relationship and looking at that relationship within your own emotional internal consistency. Okay? So, speaking of that, and shifting gears a little bit to the Q&A portion here. And so one of the things I do inside my community, the Healing Girl Gang, where we have monthly trainings where I teach you first and foremost the education, the overarching kind of theme. So for example, in January, we're talking about push-pull dynamics more specifically and more in depth. There's also implementation days, there's action taker toolkits, workbooks, worksheets, and the actual tangible steps. All of that is inside the Healing Girl Gang. But one of the things that's really cool is that you get to ask questions, and I answer and give personalized support in different ways inside the Healing Girl Gang. But one thing that's cool is that we have a mailbox inside the Healing Girl Gang. So I'm going to answer Amber K's question. So she feeling guilty for speaking up. That's the overarching topic. So I struggle with so much with bringing up concerns or addressing an issue in my relationship without feeling bad afterwards. For example, my boyfriend is not a great communicator or planner. We have my brother's wedding this weekend, and he has known about it for months. We are 2 days away from the flight that I booked for us, and now he told me he isn't going to be able to make it for the time that we planned. Mind you, I called him and brought it up. He wasn't even thinking to say something. I was so frustrated with him for not communicating and not planning in advance to make this work. I told him exactly how I was feeling and what was on my mind, but now, for whatever reason, I feel bad for him. It's annoying because I know I shouldn't feel bad. He's in the wrong. I can't help feeling like he's upset with me for being upset with him. I caught myself apologizing for being frustrated. He responded and told me not to apologize and that I have every right to be frustrated, yet I still feel bad. Help. Okay, I wish, also, one fun thing about me is I like to read these impromptu. I don't read them ahead of time because I just want to give you the thing that's coming up. I think this is so hilarious. Not hilarious to your situation, but the exact same thing happened to Craig and I. Literally the first holiday, I think at that point we were dating for 6 months. I basically got uninvited to something. Okay. I mean, that's a whole other podcast episode for Craig to talk about. But yeah, okay. So feeling bad about speaking up, and a couple of things that are something that feels important. And I'm going to just also frame this. This is not a justification or a reason, but I do think it's important to see somebody else's perspective. And seeing somebody else's perspective doesn't make them right. It doesn't excuse anything. It just gives you perspective to see the bigger picture, okay? So it sounds like to me, and this is going to sound strange, but he actually does feel bad. And I noticed this because this is a very common dynamic with Craig and myself. I feel bad for saying something, and I try to protect him, or I try to, I feel bad and he's feeling bad. And first of all, that's a really slippery slope with codependency, where their feelings impact your feelings. Okay, that's what codependency means. And so to me, it sounds like this codependency, and there's correlation and overlap and intersection with anxious attachment and codependency. To me, it feels like a ramp. If you are anxiously attached, it can be a really easy ramp into codependency. And can you be anxiously attached and not codependent? Absolutely. Okay, so it sounds like, yeah, you feel bad. And so you feel bad because he feels bad. And I just want to say he gets to have his emotions. He gets to be upset with himself. Because to me, it honestly sounds like, first of all, he knew this thing was coming and he was scared to say something to you. That's not a justification. It's just probably what was happening, where he knew about it and he was so scared of disappointing you that he didn't have the tools, he didn't have the skills, he didn't have the ability to say something. Okay, and one thing that I've noticed between my dynamic and healing that is, how can I make it safe? How can I make it safe for both of us, myself? How can I create safety for what needs to be expressed? Now, the other thing that I want to say is, and the bigger question is feeling guilty for speaking up and still feeling bad for bringing it up. That is totally something that you can be in charge of and that you have control over. Okay, I shouldn't say control. You are in charge of that, where you get to say what you want, and they get to have their feelings about it, and you get to have your feelings about it. And what is going to damage a relationship a lot is by withholding. Okay, like things need to be said in a relationship. In fact, one of the nicknames that I have with Craig and we have for each other are kind of our pinky promise and solemn oath to each other is that we get to be truthful with each other. We are truth partners. So when we were in the most toxic dynamics was because we were trying to not disappoint each other and not say things. And this went on even in our marriage, okay? And so being able to save our marriage and to be in a place where we are fully open and fully honest, it is allowing the other person to have their feelings that if I have something harsh to say or something real, not harsh, something that is just kind of hurtful, I don't want to say that, something that can sting, okay? Truth that can sting. I'll tell you this too. I got stung this weekend. Like there were some things that I probably, might have felt some shame around or wasn't proud of, but needed to be said. And what we want to remember is, how can we make it safe? Like if I need to grow in certain areas of our relationship, and as does Craig, we need to be open to receiving that feedback. And so it is really about allowing yourself to be disappointed, and they can be disappointed too. That is multifaceted and multidimensional, because relationships are multifaceted and multidimensional. We're actually going to be talking about healthy communication within the Healing Girl Gang in spring. So just be aware of that. And so that would be my thing for you, Amber, that he's allowed to be disappointed and you are too, right? And it's, how can we work through things together so that we can be on the same page is what's more important. So that's my advice on that. I'm excited for this upgrade in the podcast. If you have preferences on how we can create stronger community that's off of platforms like TikTok and Meta, I'm really highly considering Substack, Red Note. I've heard of Blue Sky. I've got to look into all these things. Or we can just make a home on YouTube. Maybe YouTube is the place to go. I don't know. But send me an email, and I am here to support you always. Love ya. Mwah.